The Bible says in verse 22, and you see it again in verses 30 through 31, we could go through the whole chapter, but for time's sake, we'll just point out that Cornelius was a man who feared God, is what verse 22 says. That an angel came to him and he said to him, Cornelius, your prayers and your giving have come up as a memorial. There it is again. Hebrew word for memorial and remembrance is the same thing. It's zikron. It means to be marked. In other words, with Cornelius in Acts chapter 10, this book, the concept, the idea, if you want to take it there, is being opened and God remembers him. Remember, the Bible says God remembered his giving, remembered his prayers, that he saw this man as righteous and that he feared God. So God is looking to mark us. According to Malachi 3:16, it says he remembers those who fear him. He marks those who fear him. You see that in Acts chapter 10, Cornelius feared God. It says in verse 16 that God remembers those who speak to one another about him. He marks them. They go in the book of remembrance, which simply means in the Hebrew, they witness. They tell other people about him. So God, the Bible says, listens and he hears when we do anything to let other people hear about the same grace, the same love, the same mercy that you and I have experienced in God. When you do something for that, the Bible says God marks it, he remembers it, and he puts it in the book of remembrance. You see Cornelius doing this in chapter 10, verse 24. He invites his friends and his families to come to hear the gospel that Simon Peter would present and preach to them. Then finally, number 3, God remembers those who honor his name or meditate on his name. And you see in Acts chapter 10 that Cornelius prayed always. Now, why was this book of remembrance mentioned? It's because they believed that their giving didn't matter. And so God says, that's not true. I know it doesn't always look that way, but I want to be clear that when you're discouraged and you're weary, I do not forget. And in Acts chapter 10, the Bible says also that Cornelius gave generously and God marked him. This was a moment that God blessed his entire house. Years before he was being faithful. He was outside of the covenant. He was a Gentile. He in no way would have ever been grafted into that moment, but God remembered and marked Cornelius and his family, and he blessed them. So God marks and blesses those who fear him, revere him, respect him, regard him. There's no pride, there's no ego, there's humility, there's a sense of openness, there's a sense of God is great, I'm not, he's big, I'm small, he's strong, I have weaknesses, but there's a sense that we regard him, fear him, those who tell people about Jesus, those who meditate on his name, and finally, those who give for the gospel to be advanced. God marks those people and he blesses those people. And the book of remembrance is brought up to remind us that God remembers and God marks us.